6 women transformed me into their perfect doll. For years, I believed my life was entirely my own. I had a steady career, a woman I loved, and a future that seemed carefully planned. Everything felt predictable until 6 women entered my world and quietly dismantled the person I thought I was. They didn't do it overnight. It happened through subtle conversations, calculated encouragement, strange little capsules, and gradual changes that became impossible to ignore. It all began with a small white bottle bearing a single name, Esterflow. My name is Ethan Wade. I'm 24 years old and work as a graphic designer. I've always been the quiet type, more comfortable behind a computer screen than in the spotlight. My girlfriend, Emma, often teased me for being too reserved, but I figured there was nothing wrong with keeping to myself. Most people saw me as ordinary, forgettable even, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Remaining unnoticed felt safe. What nobody knew was that I carried a secret I barely admitted to myself. Every time I walked past the women's clothing section, I couldn't help looking. The colors, the fabrics, the styles, they pulled at something inside me. Once, out of pure curiosity, I tried on a shade of lipstick when no one was around. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it, yet I couldn't stop staring at my reflection. A quiet voice inside whispered a question I spent years trying to silence. What if you've been pretending to be someone you're not? I buried that thought as deeply as I could and carried on with life. Emma and I shared a modest 2-bedroom apartment just outside the city after she moved in a few months earlier. She was everything I wasn't: confident, ambitious, outspoken, and always chasing the next opportunity. She approached every challenge like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Apparently, I was one of those puzzles. One evening, while we relaxed on the couch after dinner, she studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Ethan, you deserve more confidence." I forced a smile. Maybe this is just who I am. She gently brushed a strand of hair away from my forehead. "I don't believe that. You're hiding behind yourself." I laughed nervously, assuming she meant I needed to socialize more or hit the gym. I couldn't have imagined how serious she was. Emma believed confidence could be built through experimentation, and her idea of helping me would eventually involve 5 of her closest friends and a hormone-based wellness supplement I'd never heard of before. She was completing graduate studies in chemistry while working part-time at a beauty research startup developing hormone-related wellness products. Normally, she never discussed her projects outside the lab. Then one evening, everything changed. After finishing work late, I unlocked our apartment door and froze. Our living room was full. Emma sat comfortably on the sofa surrounded by 5 women I recognized from stories she'd told me. There was Jade, the brilliant medical student whose calm expression rarely changed. Sasha, a psychology major whose knowing smile always made me feel she understood people a little too well. Nina, effortlessly elegant and impossible to ignore. Claire, warm and soft-spoken, though surprisingly sharp whenever she spoke. And Devin, quiet, observant, and somehow the most intimidating of them all. Wine glasses rested on the coffee table as every one of them turned to look at me. "Hey, Ethan," Emma said with an unusually cheerful smile. "Come sit with us." I blinked in surprise. I didn't know we were having company. "We weren't," Jade replied smoothly. "We were waiting for you." Something about the way she said it sent an uncomfortable chill through me. Trying to laugh it off, I asked, "Waiting, why?" Emma patted the empty cushion beside her. "We want to help you." "Help me with what?" "Your confidence." My eyes moved from one face to another before returning to Emma. That's when she reached into her bag and held up a small bottle with a pink and white label. "Esterflow." She said the name as if it needed no explanation. "It's a low-dose hormone wellness supplement," she explained calmly. "Completely legal. Carefully tested." I instinctively stepped backward. Emma's smile never faded. "Just one capsule," she said softly. "Think of it as an experiment. See how you feel." Every instinct told me to refuse. The word no was already forming in my mind. But 6 pairs of eyes remained fixed on me, silently waiting for my answer. The voice returned when everything else had gone quiet. Are you really going to spend your whole life wondering? Those words settled somewhere deep inside me. Looking back, that was the exact moment everything changed. It wasn't the capsule itself that transformed me. It was the decision to stop resisting. That evening, I accepted the small tablet they offered. 6 pairs of eyes followed every movement as I placed it on my tongue and swallowed. Nothing happened right away. No dizziness. No rush. Just a silence filled with their knowing smiles, as if they were witnessing a future I couldn't yet imagine. The first changes were almost impossible to notice. They weren't physical. They were personal. I caught myself studying my reflection longer each morning. I became strangely aware of every gesture, every expression, every movement. It felt as though someone had adjusted the lens through which I saw myself. The others noticed before I did. Emma gently traced her fingertips across my forearm. "Your skin feels different," she murmured. Later that afternoon, Sasha draped a smooth silk robe over my shoulders with an amused smile. "You should at least see how it feels." Before I could react, Na sprayed a delicate fragrance onto my wrist. "It suits you better than you think." The next morning, Claire quietly left a small cosmetics pouch beside my bed. "No pressure," she said with a grin. "Just experiment." I laughed it off every single time. At least I pretended to. Day after day, the face staring back at me seemed softer around the edges. My lips looked fuller. My eyelashes appeared darker. Even the sharp confidence I'd always recognized in my reflection seemed to be fading into something quieter, gentler. The strange part wasn't that I noticed. It was that I stopped wanting the changes to disappear. Emma seemed to understand before I spoke a single word. She never announced that I was becoming someone else. Instead, she leaned close enough for only me to hear. "You're finally becoming one of us." The sentence lingered in my mind long after she walked away. That was when I understood the truth. This had never been about appearance alone. It wasn't simply chemistry. It was influence. Slow, patient, impossible to ignore influence. And I had stepped willingly into it. The morning after my first Esterflow capsule, I woke with an unfamiliar lightness. I wasn't ill. I wasn't exhausted. I simply felt altered. The bedsheets brushed against my body differently, almost as though every inch of my skin had become unusually sensitive. Each movement felt smoother, quieter, more graceful than before. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I searched my own reflection. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it wasn't. My jawline seemed less defined than I remembered. My eyes carried an unusual brightness. Even my lips appeared subtly different. I couldn't prove anything, yet I couldn't stop looking. That evening, Emma placed another capsule into my hand. "You don't have to take it," she said softly. For several seconds, I stared at it. Curiosity had already become something deeper. It wasn't the capsule that tempted me. It was the expression on her face, the quiet certainty that she was watching someone become exactly who she expected. Without another question, I swallowed it. By the 4th dose, even my own voice surprised me. The roughness had faded into a smoother, calmer tone. My skin looked clearer than it ever had before, almost luminous beneath the light. One afternoon, I found myself shaving my arms without consciously deciding to do it. Only afterward did I realize what I had done. Emma noticed immediately. She didn't tease me. She simply smiled, as though another invisible piece had fallen perfectly into place. The question refused to leave my mind. What if he stopped fighting it? It echoed through my thoughts until resistance felt heavier than curiosity. Looking back, that quiet moment changed everything. I believed I was making a harmless choice. I had no idea I was handing someone else the steering wheel. That night, Emma placed a tiny capsule into my hand. Everyone watched as I swallowed it. I expected something dramatic, a rush, a strange sensation, anything. Instead, nothing happened. Their calm smiles, however, suggested they knew the transformation had already begun. The first changes couldn't be measured in the mirror. They started inside my head. I found myself paying attention to details I'd never noticed before. My posture, my expressions, even the way I walked suddenly seemed important. Every glance at my reflection lasted a little longer than the last. The women noticed the differences before I admitted them. Emma brushed the back of her fingers across my arm. "Your skin feels unbelievably smooth," she whispered. Later, Sasha tossed a silk robe onto my bed with an encouraging smile. "Just try it once." Na casually sprayed a delicate fragrance onto my wrist while I wasn't paying attention. "You'll thank me later." The following morning, Claire left a small makeup pouch beside my pillow. "You don't have to wear it," she said, "but I think you'd look incredible." I laughed and insisted they were teasing me. Deep down, I wasn't so sure. Every morning the mirror reflected someone slightly unfamiliar. My features seemed softer. My lips looked fuller. My eyes carried a gentler expression that hadn't been there before. The person staring back still looked like me, but only partly. The frightening part wasn't watching the change. It was realizing I no longer wanted it to stop. Emma recognized that before I did. She never claimed I was becoming someone else. Instead, she smiled and quietly said, "You're finally letting yourself bloom." Those words stayed with me for days. Only then did I understand. This wasn't simply about a supplement or changing appearances. It was about influence. About slowly replacing certainty with acceptance until the line between my own decisions and theirs disappeared completely. By the morning after the first Esterflow capsule, I felt strangely different. I wasn't weak or dizzy. I simply felt lighter, almost as if my body moved with less effort than before. The sheets glided across my skin in a way that felt unfamiliar. Even the smallest touch seemed more noticeable. Standing before the bathroom mirror, I searched for proof that I was imagining everything. Maybe the lighting was different. Maybe I was overthinking. Still, my jaw appeared less sharp than I remembered. My eyes seemed brighter, and my lips carried a softness I couldn't explain. That evening, Emma offered me another capsule. "You can say no," she told me gently. I stared at it for several seconds. Curiosity had already turned into anticipation. What convinced me wasn't the capsule. It was the confidence in her eyes, as though she already knew which choice I would make. Without another question, I swallowed it. The changes became harder to ignore. Within days, my voice sounded calmer and smoother. My skin looked clearer than it ever had before, almost glowing under the bathroom light. One afternoon, I caught myself shaving my arms without stopping to question why. Only afterward did I realize the decision had felt completely natural. Emma noticed immediately. She didn't celebrate. She simply smiled with quiet satisfaction, as though another carefully planned step had unfolded exactly. One evening, they handed me a folded sheet of pastel stationery covered in sparkling pink handwriting. At first, I laughed. This has to be a joke. No one laughed with me. Emma motioned for me to sit while the others formed a quiet circle around the room. She unfolded the page with almost ceremonial care. "These are your new rules," she said. Her voice remained calm as she read each one. "First, always look your best. Whether you're wearing pajamas, a dress, or something elegant underneath, appearance is never optional. Second, speak only when you're invited to. A doll listens before she answers. Third, your jewelry stays on. The necklace, earrings, bracelets, they're no longer decorations. They're part of who you are. Fourth, never miss your daily supplements. Fifth, you'll refer to yourself only with feminine language." She paused before reading the final line. "And lastly, you belong to us. We decide how you're dressed, how you're presented, and how you'll grow." A nervous laugh escaped me. "You don't seriously expect me to agree to this?" Jade tilted her head. "Haven't you been agreeing all along?" The room fell silent. I wanted to argue. Instead, I looked away. A few days later, I decided I had to prove I still had control over my own choices. Before breakfast, I slipped my capsule into the toilet and flushed it away. Watching it disappear felt like reclaiming a tiny piece of myself. For almost 2 hours, I believed I'd gotten away with it. Then Emma asked me to join everyone in the living room. The others were already seated. Behind them, the television flickered to life. Security footage filled the screen. There I was, standing in the bathroom, looking around, dropping the capsule into the toilet. The blood drained from my face. "How is this possible?" Sasha answered without emotion. "We installed a hidden camera." No one sounded angry. That somehow made it worse. Emma walked toward me carrying another capsule between her fingers. She placed it gently into my palm. "We expect better from you." My hands trembled. Tears blurred my vision as I swallowed it. No one celebrated. They simply watched. That evening, Devon introduced something new. A pale blue corset rested across the bed. Without speaking, she tightened the laces one pull at a time until my waist narrowed and every breath became shallow. "There." She smiled with quiet satisfaction. "Beautiful." Each passing day brought another unfamiliar change. My silhouette softened. My waist became more defined. Curves slowly replaced angles. Eventually, they handed me a padded bra. A short while later, they replaced it with one that needed much less padding. "You've changed more than you realize," Na said with a knowing smile. Remembering the person I used to be became strangely difficult. Old clothes felt foreign. Soft fabrics, flowing robes, and delicate shoes seemed increasingly natural. Soon they stopped treating me like a guest. I became their project, their display. They spent hours choosing outfits, adjusting my posture, fixing loose strands of hair, photographing every stage as though documenting an artwork still in progress. Sometimes they would step back simply to admire the result. One afternoon they positioned me before a vanity mirror, adjusted every detail of my appearance, and exchanged satisfied smiles. "There you are," Sasha whispered. "I stopped going to work." Emma handled every excuse. Meanwhile, my days became lessons. Walking gracefully, sitting elegantly, holding a teacup correctly, smiling softly even when I didn't feel like smiling. Part of me resisted every lesson. Another part slowly stopped questioning them. Eventually, they announced another milestone. A photo session. They claimed it was simply to record my progress. I never believed that explanation. Emma arranged several carefully selected outfits across the bed while the others styled my hair, perfected my makeup, and adjusted every tiny detail until they seemed satisfied. They posed me beneath warm lights against carefully decorated backgrounds, directing every expression, every glance, every movement. When it was over, Emma leaned close. "If you ever think about leaving..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. By then, the transformation reached far beyond appearances. The physical changes had become impossible to ignore, but the emotional ones frightened me even more. I stopped hiding what I wore inside the apartment. The clothes I once lived in disappeared entirely. One afternoon I searched for them. The closet stood almost empty. Everything connected to my old life had vanished. "So, where are my things?" "They're gone," Sasha replied simply. Claire deleted my social media accounts. Emma collected my phone. My wallet and identification disappeared soon afterward. "That identity doesn't exist here anymore," someone said quietly. Little by little, every reminder of Ethan faded away until the name itself felt strangely distant. One morning Emma entered carrying a soft yellow sundress decorated with delicate embroidery. She held it up with a smile. "Ready for your first day outside, Ellie?" My heart skipped. "I can't go out dressed like that." Jade smiled from across the room. "You can." She stood and brushed an invisible wrinkle from the dress. "And today, everyone gets to meet the person you've become." Before long, they had transformed. Foundation blended flawlessly into my skin. Soft color brightened my cheeks. Long lashes framed my eyes. When I finally looked into the mirror, the person staring back felt both familiar and completely unknown. Sasha finished my makeup with a soft nude lipstick, adding just enough gloss to catch the light. Na carefully shaped loose curls into my hair before settling a delicate flower crown across my head. One final touch remained. Emma sprayed a sweet perfume onto my neck. The fragrance lingered around me like a second skin. When I finally faced the mirror, I froze. The reflection looking back wasn't someone pretending. It wasn't a disguise. The face staring at me belonged to a young woman I couldn't recognize, yet somehow couldn't deny. No one had to tell me to stay still. I simply did. Later that afternoon, they drove me to an elegant cafe on the outskirts of town. "We chose this place carefully," Emma explained. "No familiar faces." Even so, I felt exposed. People glanced our way. A man smiled politely before returning to his conversation. Two women complimented my dress as they walked past. No one questioned me. No one looked twice. To everyone around us, I was simply Ellie. That realization unsettled me more than anything else. Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're doing wonderfully." I looked down at my freshly painted nails wrapped around a porcelain coffee cup. Across from me, Claire quietly snapped photographs while Sasha captured short videos on her phone. Without warning, Jade slid a folded note beneath my plate. I unfolded it carefully. "Congratulations. Your evaluation has been completed successfully. The next stage begins in 72 hours. The 6. My heartbeat quickened. That evening I confronted Emma. "What evaluation?" She smiled gently, brushing a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "The one you never realized you were taking." Her answer haunted me. Late that night, I locked myself inside the bathroom and cried. Not because I desperately wanted my old life back, because I couldn't remember what that life had truly felt like. The memories of Ethan were fading into something distant and blurry. The most frightening part was realizing I wasn't sure I wanted them back. 3 nights later, they prepared what they called the final ceremony. They covered my eyes before dressing me. I felt satin against my skin. Lace brushed softly along my legs. High heels clicked beneath my feet as they guided me across the room. When the blindfold disappeared, candlelight surrounded me. The 6 stood in a circle. A camera rested on a tripod nearby. Emma stepped forward holding a neatly prepared document. "This is the last step," she said quietly. "If you accept it, your old life ends here." Silence filled the room. For a brief moment it felt as though 2 versions of myself were fighting for control. One begged me to stop. The other simply reached for the pen. My signature appeared before I fully understood the decision. Soft applause echoed around the room. 3 days later, the consequences began appearing everywhere. Passwords no longer worked. Accounts became inaccessible. Every connection to the identity I once carried seemed to disappear one by one. Emma eventually handed me a small envelope. Inside rested identification bearing an unfamiliar name. Ellie. Everything else had vanished. I stared at it in disbelief. "So, that's all that's left." Emma kissed my forehead. "No," she whispered. "That's who you've become." Her words brought no comfort. Instead, I felt like a carefully arranged figure displayed inside someone else's collection. Every glance in the mirror reinforced the same unsettling truth. My appearance no longer resembled the person I once knew. Even my voice sounded unfamiliar, lighter and softer than I remembered. The changes reached far beyond appearance. My schedule became tightly controlled. Regular photo sessions filled my weeks. Each assignment introduced another carefully chosen look, another carefully crafted version of Ellie. The 6 observed every detail, correcting posture, expressions, and behavior with quiet precision. Then everything shifted again. One evening, Emma arrived home accompanied by a man named Jason. He greeted everyone comfortably before wrapping an arm around her. I watched in stunned silence. She introduced him with complete calm. "My boyfriend." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. "I thought." The words caught in my throat. Emma looked at me with surprising gentleness. "You misunderstood what we shared." Jason glanced toward me with open curiosity. "So this is Ellie." Emma smiled. "Yes." Nothing more. No explanation. No apology. I retreated to the bathroom, closed the door, and buried my face in a towel. The tears came before I could stop them. I wasn't even certain whose loss I was mourning anymore. That night, I made one final attempt to leave. I packed the few clothes that still fit, gathered the documents I had been given, and quietly walked toward the front entrance. I reached for the handle. It wouldn't move. The security keypad displayed a code I didn't know. Above it, a tiny camera blinked silently. Then another. And another. For the first time, I realized the apartment hadn't simply become my home. It had become my prison. I collapsed against the hallway wall, my hands shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Then the television powered on by itself. Emma appeared on the screen, her expression calm, almost affectionate. "Trying to run never ends well," she said softly. "The ones who stay are the ones who become beautiful." She smiled. "You're far beyond turning back now, Ellie." The screen went dark. The silence that followed felt even louder. That night, sleep never came. I remained curled beneath a blanket on the sofa, still wrapped in one of Emma's silk robes. The faint scent of jasmine lingered around me, a reminder of everything I wanted to forget but couldn't escape. From somewhere deeper inside the apartment came laughter. The six of them were together, talking, laughing, celebrating. Whether they were celebrating me or my surrender, I couldn't tell. By morning, Emma called for me. She sat before an elegant vanity, slowly brushing her hair as sunlight spilled across the room. I lingered near the doorway. Mascara stained my cheeks. The pale blue robe hung loosely around my shoulders. Without looking up, she tapped the empty chair beside her. I stayed where I was. Her voice remained gentle. "Come here." Almost without thinking, I obeyed. She opened a small velvet box. Inside rested a slender silver ring decorated with tiny pink stones. Recognition struck immediately. It was the same ring Claire had shown me weeks earlier. Emma lifted it carefully. "This isn't simply an accessory," she said. "It's a promise." Before I could answer, she slipped it onto my finger. For an instant, the room seemed strangely still. I looked toward the mirror. Something felt different. The reflection staring back appeared softer somehow. More peaceful. Not like someone pretending. Like someone who had always belonged there. Emma watched my expression carefully. "You finally see her." "I don't understand." "You've been fighting yourself," she replied quietly. "Not us." I pulled my hand back. "You can't decide who I am." From behind me, Claire answered gently. "We never believed we could." She smiled. "We only believed you discover it." A garment bag was placed on the bed. Inside rested a carefully crafted white lace dress. Its fabric caught the morning light with quiet elegance. "I won't wear it," I whispered. No one argued. Instead, they patiently dressed me piece by piece. Delicate sleeves, long gloves, soft stockings, elegant shoes. Finally, Claire fastened a lace choker around my neck with careful hands. "There," she said. When they guided me back before the mirror, I barely recognized the person reflected there. The room fell silent. Then the front door opened. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. A familiar voice called my name. "Ethan?" Every heartbeat seemed to stop. My mother stood frozen in the doorway. Her eyes slowly traveled from my face to the dress, the jewelry, the carefully styled hair. For several long seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, her voice broke. "What happened to you?" I tried to answer. Nothing came. My throat tightened until tears blurred everything. "I'm sorry." The words escaped as little more than a whisper. My knees gave way. She caught me before I reached the floor. For a brief moment, I buried my face against her shoulder exactly as I had years before. The perfume, the makeup, the dress, none of it disappeared. Emma stepped forward. "They're happy now." My mother's expression hardened. "You don't get to speak for my child." The room grew tense. Someone quietly replied, "They've changed." I slowly wiped my eyes. My fingers rested against the silver ring. When I spoke again, the word surprised even me. "I don't know who I used to be anymore." Silence filled the room. I looked once more into the mirror. The reflection gazed back without fear. For the first time, it wasn't the mirror that unsettled me. It was realizing I no longer knew which version of myself felt more familiar. A week passed after my mother's visit. She never returned. The apartment became quieter than before, yet somehow felt even smaller. Emma told me she believed time would heal everything. I wasn't certain she was right, but I also wasn't certain of anything anymore. Deep down, I couldn't blame my mother for walking away. The person she remembered no longer existed in any obvious way. Every day, I looked less like the child she had raised and more like the identity that had slowly taken shape inside those apartment walls. Life settled into a strange routine. Morning lessons, afternoon rehearsals, evening appearances. They chose my wardrobe before I woke up. They corrected my posture, my smile, even the rhythm of my voice. Public outings became ordinary, and the online broadcasts grew larger with every passing week. The name Ellie Bloomfield gathered followers who knew nothing about the life that had come before. Eventually, I stopped arguing. When they asked me to smile, I smiled. When they chose my clothes, I wore them. When they handed me a script, I spoke every line exactly as written. Resistance had quietly disappeared. Then one evening, everything changed. A gentle knock sounded at my bedroom door. Emma stepped inside alone. No cameras, no audience. None of the others followed her. For the first time in months, she looked uncertain. Ellie, her voice barely rose above a whisper. We need you. I sat upright. What happened? She hesitated before answering. Someone broke one of our oldest rules. I instinctively looked at the silver ring resting on my finger. The ring. She nodded, the promise attached to it. A long silence settled between us. Finally, I asked, what do you expect me to do? Emma reached into her pocket and produced a small black envelope, placing it carefully into my hands. The decision belongs to you. I frowned. I don't understand. She met my eyes. Only the doll has the authority to judge. The words barely registered. You mean, if someone must leave, she interrupted softly, you'll decide who. The room suddenly felt smaller. For the first time since everything began, they weren't giving me instructions. They were waiting for mine. Emma moved toward the doorway before stopping one last time. At midnight, everyone will gather. She looked back at me. By sunrise, either one of us will be gone.
She paused.
Or you'll choose to walk away from everything we've built. The door closed behind her. Silence returned. I remained seated, staring at the ring circling my finger. Its tiny pink stone reflected the bedroom light. For months it had represented obedience. Now it represented choice. I walked slowly toward the mirror. The reflection looking back seemed calm, almost composed, while my thoughts raced in every direction. Who had I become? Who was making this decision? The frightened person I used to be, or the confident figure standing before me now? 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment.
Once, twice,
3 times. Then nothing. I approached the bedroom door, wrapped my fingers around the handle, and drew a slow breath. Before opening it, I whispered so quietly that only I could hear the words. I finally know who I'm looking at. Later that night, curiosity led me to Emma's phone. The gallery contained hundreds of carefully organized photographs from every stage of my transformation. I scrolled through them one after another. Each image showed someone becoming more polished, more confident, more unfamiliar. Then my finger stopped. One portrait filled the screen. Bright eyes, gentle features, a quiet smile. The person in the photograph looked completely at ease. For several long moments, I simply stared. The strangest part wasn't how different she looked. It was realizing that somehow I no longer saw a stranger looking back.